As I said earlier, this meeting is being recorded. And if anyone else is recording the meeting, you're required to let me know. I don't hear anyone else recording, so I'm trying to get back to the agenda. So first on the agenda was approval of minutes. I don't remember what that date, whatever the last meeting was.
April 26th.
Okay, approval of minutes for April 26th. Are there any motions on that?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, motion to approve. I think it was seconded by Dave. That's what I heard first.
Mhm.
For the loudest.
Trying to get back to my. All right. Any other discussion on that? Okay, I'm not hearing any discussion. Sorry, I'm still trying to find my agenda. Okay, and I got my agenda. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote on approving the minutes. Dave,
Aye.
Donna,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Wisty,
Yes.
Garth,
Yes.
and I am abstaining because I was not at that meeting. So that motion passes and the minutes are approved. Oh, sorry, I accidentally went out of order. Before that on our agenda is a public comment period. If there's anyone who would like to make a public comment, now would be the time. 3-minute public comment.
I don't think we have any public.
Doesn't look like there's anyone else
No-
here, so
No visitors were excited to come chat with us.
no one's here for public comments. So we'll proceed on our agenda to new business, evaluating committee processes. So in this section we have five different items, and I think as you guys talked about at the last meeting, I think it would be good to kind of do them a little bit individually so it's a little more organized. I have copies. Christian sent me copies of the final applications and scoring sheets and all that. So if we want, I could share that and we could maybe, I don't know, do some edits in it or something.
That would be
Okay, so, and then also I was thinking, none of this is urgent to get done tonight or, immediately. So I was thinking, let's just go through this as far as we get. And if we only get to the first 3 out of the 5, then we'll just end there and pick it up at the next meeting. And we'll probably have things we want to talk about again on all those anyway. So we'll probably just keep those same 5. So does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So first is.
Wait, can I just ask something?
Yeah, go for it.
When I was thinking about this during the last month, included in that list that we're going to evaluate, it didn't have anything about like our discussion and our process, after like the application and all that came in. And to me, that talking that we did back and forth and like the charts that you guys made were hugely important. So I'd like to be sure that we include that so that those things become part of the process.
Yeah, and I guess
Good
so
point.
number 3 is committee review / deciding which projects to fund. So
Well, maybe
Yeah, I
that
thought
covers
that-
it then.
I thought that's where that would go.
Okay,
yeah,
sounds good.
okay. Yeah, so like I said, first we have applications. So yeah, Donna, go ahead.
Okay, so back at our first meeting, when I said, dang, we should have a question like, what do you do if you don't get funded all the way? And Susan said, yeah, we should write down all the stuff that we missed. So I've been sitting, waiting on that.
Oh,
to
nice.
say- I have my notes from that. And one of them is, what can you do if you're not fully funded?
I think that's important, yeah.
Yep.
The other one that we struck on was asking for quotes or procurement process, getting documentation on that stuff. Because I think that was from the fairgrounds roof, it was just numbers, and we said, well, you know, where are the quotes here? So
Yeah.
somehow making sure that we have a place for that. And there was another one asking for specific locations and site plans.
Yeah.
Good.
So I was really good at taking notes the first bit, but that's all I got.
Travis, could you share the screen with the application
Yeah.
itself? Because there were a couple of things that I remember looking at and that I don't have it in front of me right now.
Application, making sure I'm sharing the right one here. So so we have the instructions at the top and then the
Mhm.
pre-application. I don't
Okay,
know, should we start with pre-application since that
yeah.
kind of
we probably should.
chronologically comes first?
Yep, yep. Mhm.
I mean,
Um,
that seemed to go pretty well
Mhm.
in
Yeah,
terms of like, making sure everybody was, in line with the various things.
Yeah, one thing that I do know is when we met with Stuart reviewing, like doing his initial review of projects, one thing he said was where we asked for the program area, a lot of the ones that we got, people were just like, it was like a wish list, just like checking off all these things.
Mhm.
And he was saying we should have a grid with like, open space, historic, community housing, basically like, this grid,
Mhm.
and make them put one X in one of those boxes to say like, this is what instead of like, oh, well, I think it should be like open space, because like all the recreation ones, people were also marking open space, and there just wasn't a lot of clarity around what
Mhm.
what they even thought they were supposed to be under. So it made it seem like they didn't really know. They were just kind of guessing. So that was one thing Stuart said was we could change it to where they have to just select one of these.
Well, it's really confusing because it's like, do we have 4 categories or do we have 3? Because open space and recreation seem to get sort of lumped together. Like in terms of we have when we split up the pie and we say, 10% is going to be this, 10% is going to be that, 10% is going to be that. We don't actually split open space from recreation, in my recollection.
Yeah, so open space and recreation, they share the same pot, but we
Yeah,
have
well,
different
I think,
rules about what can apply in each one.
so I think that it's confusing. I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
confused about it and I've been through the process, how does somebody else even understand that? Why don't they have different pots? Should they have different pots?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not sure, looking at this grid, I'm not sure that it helps. Because we would have to really then go into a very strong description about what's the difference between create and preserve, and I
Mhm.
I don't know that it helps us. I'm
And
I like the idea that people have to look at it and think about it, but I don't know if if we told them one, are they creating or are they preserving? I think we might find, or in some cases, and restoring. I'm not sure that I think we'd have the same thing happen, that we would look at it and go, that's really not restoring. It's really preserving,
yeah. So maybe that's what, like, with the pre-application process, they throw out their shotgun of ideas of what it might be, and then then we help whittle it down to what it actually is.
Yeah, I
Right.
maybe think so.
Yeah, I mean, I almost wonder, I feel like it was one of those things where people they thought their ideas were something other than they were, and we had to be like, well, wait a minute, actually, it's not that, it's this. So how helpful is it to even have that? Is
Yeah.
that something that we end up determining for them anyway?
The only thing that occurs to me is that at least it gives parameters. So we're not having people coming in and asking us for money for daycare.
Right, right, absolutely. And I just wonder if we need to like. Here are the, here are the parameters. Do you feel your project fits them? Why? And maybe like have it be narrative or something rather than a checkbox.
I think we have
Um,
that in our full application. I think there's
Yeah,
how number 5, how does this project fit the requirements of the Community Preservation Act?
yeah. Yeah, that definitely was a sticking point, and I'm still stuck about it. I'm on the board of Just Roots, and I mean, I think that they might want to apply for CPA funding, and I'm like, I'm not sure what Stuart would say about that. It's town land, they lease it, like it's really confusing.
Mhm.
Well, I'm not sure they qualify, but as
Right.
as an ex-member of the board, I'm not sure they qualify, but. that's-
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but then in a way, it's like it's a community thing, and sometimes, in the land is owned by the town, and so this
I
is a
mean,
real sticky piece.
yeah, they're it is possible to fund community gardens on
Mhm.
public land, but I don't know how that works if it's like an organization, Anyway, we don't have to get
Yeah.
into it because we don't have an application from them, but
Right, right.
maybe it could. I don't know.
It's a good example of how
Yeah.
it's confusing. That's
Mhm.
all.
Well,
Right.
like, on the one hand, the Agriculture Commission was an organization,
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, private companies can,
Mhm.
private organizations and nonprofits can get funding, but I just mean like, I don't know how it works. We haven't had I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't want to get us in the weeds. I just
Yeah,
brought
yeah.
that out there as an example of how
Mhm.
it is confusing, and I don't really know how we make it less confusing.
well, I just want to say about Just Roots, it might depend on the exact project that they were asking.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, if they have a historic thing if the barn is somehow historic, like that's something like, right, like Whately just voted to, preserve the silo at Quanquat, which is a, completely private
Mhm.
Right.
an entity. Maybe, I don't know if the barn is historic. That would be up to, I guess, up to the historic commission. But if they wanted to do something like that, or it's something else with like, oh, we're going to put in a bunch of walking trails on the far side of the farm, so it falls under recreation.
Mhm.
Um,
Could we put the legwork more on our applicants? Maybe by, of course, just having sort of a brief, like, tell us why you think this fits into CPC. And if you're trying to figure that out, go to the CPC website and come up with some comparable projects that you think.
Are we talking about the full application or the pre-application?
Well, right now we're talking about the pre-application, and
Right.
maybe we don't need to get so deep into it there.
Yeah.
But I think that what we're struggling with is how much, do we just have them check a bunch of boxes, or do we just say check only one, and how, open space and recreation are the same pot, so it's kind of messy, I think.
And it's hard, I think also, just because it's so new in Greenfield that, no, we haven't, if we had been doing it for 10 years, we might expect people to have a little more of an idea of which box it would fit in, maybe. I don't know.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So I don't, maybe we leave this one for now, but
Yeah,
maybe we
leave it for
add,
now.
maybe we add something like that says, here's a website that you can visit if you're looking for comparable projects to help you figure out which one of
Yeah.
these boxes to check.
I thought maybe it did have a link to the Community Preservation Coalition, maybe not.
You know, if it were just a link to that whole thing, there's too much information to expect somebody to go through, I think.
Yeah,
So
but
if we wanted them to really look at some examples, the link should really be to different examples, you know, so that they don't have to read through that whole thing. That's too much.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, there is like the one web page that's about does my project qualify, and it like has a lot of information about each category. I mean, it could just be that web page. We say like read this web page, and you
Yeah.
know, if you think it's open space, read open space and tell us if it fits there.
Mhm.
And I would be a little hesitant about sending them to the database, because it was stressed to me that that should not be used as an example of what is allowable, because there are projects that have been approved by CPCs that are not legally allowable. So
Okay,
just because it has been done doesn't mean it should have been done.
right. Well, there's, when you go to that page, the first thing you see is that chart right there. But then there's also some links to, you know, the 4 different, and again, there are 4 of them. And it's pretty clear, like the difference between open space and recreation when you look at this. So,
And that's the CPA website you're looking at now?
yep, communitypreservation.org/allowable uses. I'll put the link into the chat.
Here's that page. So you get here by going technical assistance, is our project allowable? And then has the chart. And then it goes into each, you know, this is what open space is. You know, this is historic preservation. And it has links to the definition. So you could read what the definition of community housing is, for example.
Mhm.
So I feel like that page would be good to
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Mhm.
link to. So maybe that should be in the like in the instructions,
Mhm.
and maybe not necessarily on that form. I'm gonna open this back up again. All right.
Onward.
Yeah. So one big thing for me was, I mean, I guess on the full application, but also on the pre-application. I think it ended up being way more chaotic for like the recreation department, for example, than I thought it would have been. Where people were submitting pre-applications without ever even talking to the recreation department, and then saying like, oh, well, I'll get them to sign on later. Like, I don't know how to change that to where, I mean, the only ways to change that I can think of are either the recreation department has to be the one submitting the pre-application form if it's on recreation land, or they at least have to sign on before you submit your pre-application, and we will reject your pre-application if they haven't signed on when you send it in.
Mm.
I don't really know. I mean, those both, I don't think they seem like great ideas, but I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, if we request a lot of information before they even find out if they're eligible, you know, they might be going in, let's take recreation. They might be going and bugging Christie, and it might not even be appropriate.
Oh yeah, you're saying like it might not even be an allowable project
Yeah.
anyway. So why bother them
Yeah.
Why bother them at that point? I guess my concern is that if people submit a project that is allowable, I think it puts a lot of pressure on Christie to just say yes to all of them
Right.
going through the application process. And
Mhm.
like then someone's coming and saying, oh, this is allowable, like, can you sign on and we'll do this? And I mean, as we know, the recreation department doesn't have the most staff.
Right.
Right.
I think it really put a burden on them, like, to have to deal with all of this year, even though, a lot of projects got funded and that's great, but
You know,
I don't know if Donna, if you have any, like, from Recreation Commission point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's tough because it's almost like we would want to get an idea of what the projects were and then speak to Christie about them. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe getting this out earlier, I do feel like we were under a lot of time pressure this time around. So if we had a longer timeline, and maybe it's, the pre-application form, it's really just, it's like, it's sort of throwing it out there to see what's possible. And I think I would want to talk to Christie about it. I mean, I think if
Mhm.
people, like for all of these categories, if people put them in, if they put them in as open space, like that necessarily doesn't have to go to Christie. I mean, maybe that would be going to you, Travis.
Well, it would depend on what the
it
land
was.
is.
Yeah. I think part of us asking like what, where is this going is so that we can. Part of the process might be we get the pre-applications and then we disseminate them among the recreation department or the housing. Or potentially planning or potentially, all of historic. And sort of see what they say about them.
Right. I mean, do we want to make that part of the pre-application process? Be like, we need you. You don't have to get like official vote, but please bring this to the appropriate commission. Right. If you think you have a historic project, bring it to this. Bring it up at a historical commission meeting. If you think you have a recreation project or open space project, bring it up to the recreation commission meeting.
I mean, I think it's chicken or egg because on the one hand, yeah, they should know in advance, but on the other hand, that's going to be putting a lot of stuff for those commissions to decide on prior to there ever really even being an application. I mean, I'm thinking more of like, is there a way that we can be the gatekeepers of that? So that we get all the applications and then they're disseminated to the different commissions and the commissions can then give us feedback to help us make our determination about whether or not they should move forward. And then we don't have like people randomly sending pre-applications to Christie and asking her to sign off.
Right. Although, I mean, if it's on recreation land, I mean, that's sort of what I told her during a number of meetings. Like, she needs to be the gatekeeper. If she wants to tell some people, like,
Maybe next year.
This is not going to be our focus this year. I realize you're very excited about X, Y, and Z thing, but the Recreation Commission is most interested in doing A, B, and C instead.
Do we have any information about
I
other
I feel like it's okay for her to say like, no, the Recreation Commission will not back that project this year.
Sorry, Donna, what was your question?
Well, I was just wondering if there's guidance from, people who have been doing this for a long time. And yeah, I agree with you, Garth. I just wonder, it's like, do we want to bring them to Christie rather than the applicants to like show up at her door? I feel like, it's almost like a number of gates, like we're the first gatekeepers, and then she or whoever are the second gatekeepers. And I always, I always think of our pre-application as more of an intent to apply rather than
Mhm.
like an application per se.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so one thought that I had was maybe, project title applicant, maybe we should have a section here for like who owns or manages the land. If, if it's a project on land, it could technically not be, but usually it is. And that way they would at least have to think like, oh, the recreation department, or, like what, I don't know how to word it, but it would have to be like, what city department or land, or who is the landowner,
Right, right. Where's the location and who has
Yeah,
the,
so, that was one thing you said was like a location. I mean, we could ask for like project address maybe, or I mean, they might not all have like an address, so maybe that's more for the full application, knowing like an exact address and parcel number and things like that. But maybe at least here it could be like who owns the land and um and somehow indicate maybe that like whoever owns the land needs to sign off on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, Susan. Oh, Susan, you're muted. Susan, you're muted. I don't think she can hear me either.
Susan,
Can you do an ask to unmute?
Mhm.
there, she just got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep, my dog is playing with a bone and behind me and it makes noise. It strikes me that it's very difficult for Christie as an individual, from talking to people who pay her salary, to say no to anybody. It's a very awkward position because she, there were some things that I knew she in that she was more excited about than others, and some she felt were not ready. But she's in a position where she's kind of like, everybody comes to me, it would be a good idea, let's say yes, because I don't really have a good reason to say no. What I'm wondering is if the commission, if the rec commission can be a screener for that, then it takes it off of Christie's plate. We have to make sure that you have time to do it, but
Mhm.
that it would make it, it would take the pressure off of her as an individual, because that means that, oh, Christie, please say yes, please say yes. And, if it goes to a group, then the group makes the decision. That takes it off of her, I don't, and she'll be in your meeting and she can give her opinions on things, but it's a group decision.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because there are commissions associated with each of these subject areas.
Except housing.
Oh, okay.
There's
The
no-
housing authority, right?
there's a Greenfield Housing
The
Authority.
housing authority is not a town commission.
Mhm.
It's a different category.
Mm.
It's a semi-private nonprofit. It's kind of a quasi-governmental organization, but it does not have authority over any housing other than the housing that it is responsible for, which is, which is Oak Courts and Elm Terrace and those kinds of things. It does not have, for instance, it doesn't have, if somebody wanted to do something in Leiden Woods and was coming to us, they don't own Leiden Woods. So they don't have responsibility for Leiden Woods, so they're not the appropriate place. But I think of the other three, there ought to be a requirement to go to the commission and not to, to Eric or to Christie or, or and with the historic commission, there's just the commission. So they should go before the commission.
So are we sort of suggesting then that the different commissions would sort of set goals for if they had you know, like CPC money, that these would be their priorities of how they would spend it? Are we sort of asking them to do that?
I kind of feel like what we're talking about is maybe a little outside of our scope as the CPC. Like, I think if the recreation department wants the recreation commission to screen their projects and make that decision, I don't think that has anything to do with us. I think that's up to the recreation department to decide that. And like, all we need is the recreation department to either sign off or not. And how they do it is up to them, I think.
Mm,
Because I don't think we can tell someone how, and like the historic stuff, if a project is on like the state registry of historic places, the historic commission doesn't have anything to do with it. Like, they don't have to sign off on it if it's already a historic property. So it shouldn't have to go through the historic commission for that. Oh, it's only for things that aren't on the registry, and then they have to say whether or not. So that already happens with the historic projects.
right.
If they're not on the historic register, the historic commission has to say, yes, this is historically relevant to Greenfield.
Mhm.
But that's set in the law. Like, that's not, we didn't set that.
So is what you're saying, we should throw it back to the departments and commissions to set their own way of dealing with this?
I mean, it kind of seems that way to me, because like, we have our role, which is, evaluating projects. And I mean, we would almost be like giving away our power to someone else to like, you know what I mean? Or like, not even that. I think it's just that we would be, I don't know, adding all these hoops that I don't think are necessary or necessarily wise.
Mm,
Well,
yeah,
I think this is something that, being on recreation and having it be the most hopping of the categories that we can discuss at our next commission meeting regarding how what would work well in terms of this process. And again, I think that I don't want to belabor the pre-application. I mean, we're just making sure that they're in the ballpark and and then, getting some information from them so we can provide them with some feedback.
Yeah.
mhm,
And I think that as they come in, it would be something that, we would give the different, whoever is the commission a heads up,
yeah, yeah.
So do we oh yeah, Dave?
I'm listening with fascination around this discussion. After all of this, my personal feeling is that we're making this way too complicated. I'm looking at question number, pardon me from looking away because I have it on my other screen, but
Mhm.
I'm looking at question number 7 on the application. Who is encouraging you with this project? If you have letters from organizations or city boards, please attach them. And several of the applications have included the city of good, like I'm looking at one now. It says that the city of Greenfield, the Recreation Committee has a letter attached. So it's kind of up to the applicant to get this support, I think. And one last observation, I didn't get the impression that Christie was suffering or complaining. She wanted to be involved in this as they came about. So I think by orchestrating it or by mandating certain things, that we're just making it more complicated for everybody. So my bottom line is I think we ought to leave it alone. And maybe we could tweak the language in question number 7, but for the most part, I think we should leave it as it is.
Yeah, and I think the only difference is, I think in that number 7, I think it's just asking for like letters of support.
Right.
Whereas I think I thought we were talking more about like whoever owns, like if a city department owns that land, that city department has to be the one getting the money. So they have to sign on. Like, I mean, we've been using the recreation department, like if if it's a project in Highland Park, the money has to go to the recreation department. So the recreation department has to sign on. And how do we make sure that this recreation department actually wants to do it? You know,
I
which
think
is
that's
separate
part of
from
our-
like a letter of support.
I think that's part of our exploring as we analyze this, is to get some of that information in the conversation with the applicant.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe, I mean, at least we're only on the pre-app right now, so maybe at
Right.
least on
Oh,
the
that's right.
pre-app,
I think it feels like the feedback from any of the pre-apps, if someone, if someone's just like throwing this up, see if it'll stick kind of thing, and be like, yes, and coordinate with so-and-so who actually owns that land, and make sure they're also interested. That can just be our standard feedback on it. And make, when/if you do a full application, make sure you have support from the owners. Right, that'd be the way.
yeah. So I think it sounds like what we're saying is leave the pre-application the way that it is. Because we just want general project ideas to see if they would, be eligible or not, and then anything beyond that can wait till the full application.
Yeah,
Is
so
that okay?
after all that,
30 minutes of discussion to end up back where we started, but that's okay. We're talking it through here.
It is okay, because like Donna's gonna go back and
Yeah.
We determined it was pretty okay as it was.
Pretty open. Okay.
Sort of kind of all right.
okay.
So on the application, another comment that Stuart had was he was saying he thought it was very unusual the way we had this with like the applicant and then like who is your fiscal sponsor. He was saying like whoever, like if Joe Schmo puts in a pre-application for a Highland Park project, the recreation department is the applicant because it's on recreation land and the money's going to go to the recreation department. So he was saying that the applicant should be the recreation department in that case, because technically they are. Basically, because like, if someone puts in a project on recreation land, really all they're doing is like the application part, and then it's up to the recreation department to manage the money and, actually see the project through. So I don't know. We're kind of getting back into the same thing here, but
Right.
now it's the full application. So I feel like it's more real.
The problem that I have is that, when we had as many applications as we did from people who were working with the recreation department. And yes, the recreation department is the final applicant, but in reality, the ideas and the plan for a lot of this stuff came out of community people. And so in some ways it puts it, if I were a community person and I said, I want the pickleball courts, and then I'm expecting Christy to write the application because the recreation department is the responsible body. That doesn't make sense to me in relation to what we've been doing.
Right.
Because the initiative is coming from the community, it's not coming from the department.
I wonder if maybe this part needs to be just changed around a bit then, to say like, someone would be the applicant, and I don't know, I think maybe fiscal sponsor is maybe kind of vague, and maybe it should be like who I was thinking who's the responsible party. But
Right, who's who again, to get back to who owns the land, who has
Right,
control.
right.
I mean, I know that we have like we funded the Highland Park Trail improvements, but I don't think Christie's planning on making that happen. She's she's expecting Mr. Boas to make it happen, and she'll
Right,
support him.
he's already reached out and coordinated with the AMC and the AmeriCorps group and.
Exactly, and
Right,
I think.
he's sort of the volunteer project manager on that.
And I think that that's what, I think that, that's one of the things I love about this whole thing is that it empowers citizens. And I feel like if you say, well, you come up with an idea, I mean, we kept saying, it's gonna be your ideas, but you're gonna have to follow through on them, We're not just gonna take your ideas and then do them for you,
Right.
and I think we wanna maintain that boundary as much as possible, so. Just putting that out there as we think about how we word this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's a wording question. It could even be there could be an additional question. Are you working with a city department?
Mm.
And it could be that simple.
But
So
then that gets tricky because they have to be if it's on recreation land,
But yes, but then, right, but then the question is, then that's a part of our discussion with them.
Yeah.
My concern is making this feel so much like it has to be the city department applying that they lose that initiative. And so, I'm just wondering if we need another question, which at least points them in the direction of if there is a city department. Oh, I better talk to the recreation department about that because it is a recreation project.
I agree, Sue. Yeah.
Mm.
So maybe after. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe a question like, is this project on city land? Yes or no? And if if yes,
Who controls it?
name the department or commission who is co-sponsoring this project with you. Something like that. I mean, we could probably word it better than that, but I mean, the only land I can think of would be, recreation land would be the recreation department. Conservation land would be the conservation commission. And if it's any land other than that, I don't even know what projects would be allowable.
Well, it could be
Historic
city land designated for housing. As an example.
housing, okay, yeah. So should I, geez. I have track changes on, that's why it's this different color. Is this project on, we can reword these things later. City owned land. If yes.
You said,
Which,
or if yes, name the department or commission who is co-sponsoring.
yeah. I heard a little bark there.
Yes, you did. There's somebody in the neighborhood who has moved about in some way, shape, or form.
Project with you.
Yeah.
I just tell them to.
Yeah.
I guess this is kind of like, this is assuming, like, what does the recreation department put here, Like they would say yes, but they wouldn't have to name anyone because they already own it.
Right, but but most of what we're talking
Right, they
about.
just put themselves. That's okay.
Yeah. That's okay, yeah.
They're like, we're the recreation department and we're the recreation department and we control the recreation department. Thank you.
Yeah.
Give us.
Well, the recreation department as a whole isn't going to be applying.
They could be.
They could.
They applied for the site amenities, the
Right.
Beacon
Bocce
Park.
ball, yeah.
Right,
right?
Oh, that's right.
right.
I think, honestly, I think from what I've seen in most cities and towns, that's usually how projects happen is the recreation department would be the one submitting it and then following through. I think from talking to Stuart, it sounds like we're a little unusual in how much citizens are able to bring projects forward.
On the other hand, when you have a staff of 3 in the recreation department who are already up to their eyeballs, it's either going to be things that they've already determined through their own commission have to be done, but new
Yeah.
stuff is not necessarily going to come through there just because they're overloaded as it is.
Mhm.
Right, they're just trying to like hold the line,
Right,
just keep, stay above water.
exactly. So,
Yeah, no,
I think-
Greenfield has a grand tradition of letting citizens put forward initiatives and or muddle in stuff for better or worse. So here we are.
yeah, I think
So-
that's fine.
So one of the things that I had not done before that I'm actually doing right now on the side is just looking at what other towns say. I like, right now I'm in Rentham, receives endorsement from relevant town boards or departments.
Hmm.
Well, we did ask, there was paperwork that went to relevant departments and they gave comments.
Mhm.
We did have that. But that's kind of later in the process.
Yeah, that's more like for us to I think that's what I understood was that was more for us to hear from departments as to whether there would be any issues with that
Right.
project moving forward.
Right,
Not necessarily like if that department owns that land, whether
Right.
they're okay with it or not.
right.
It's more just like, oh, well, what if, we were gonna be, I think they gave the example like, oh, we were gonna be like ripping up that, area and repaving it, so don't do that project.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I just added right here, project location. That was one of the things Donna had said. I don't know if we wanna say like location / address, because it might not always have an address. If it's like Highland Park, what's the address? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And then-
4.5 Bears Den Road.
And then maybe later in the application, we can ask for like specific like site plans and stuff.
Well, we do ask them for more specifics as we move along.
Yeah.
Right.
Does this section look good to everyone for now?
For now, I think, okay.
Yeah,
Good enough.
For project cost.
Well, we're on page 2.
Yeah, on page 2, here we go. Well, just to remind you, we're only on 1 of 5 on our agenda of the parts of our process to review, so we might not get through that today. So I guess this is, I guess on the pre-application, we ask whether it's acquisition, creation, preservation, support, rehabilitation. But I don't think we asked that here, like,
Right,
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Misty.
it's like on the pre-application, we're asking them what they think. And then they come to us and then we might help them clarify that.
Mhm.
And then here they should be really specific and know which category, period. So I think it's okay to,
Right, because we will have given them feedback in
Yeah.
between there. They're like, no, this isn't a space because you're doing a recreation project.
yeah,
Make
And
sure you
that's
put it in the correct.
that's what we did last year, like after we did all the pre-applications, when we talked about it and we would say like, oh, this is actually just recreation, rehabilitation. Then when Christian and I sent those, because at the bottom of the pre-app, it has Greenfield CPC use.
Mhm.
I actually went in and I checked eligible, and I just put like CPC for the reviewer because we all reviewed it. And then I put in the comments, this is a recreation rehabilitation project,
Mhm.
not, all these things that you checked up above.
Right.
So I guess if we have that as part of like the packet with the final application, I mean, it's almost like, do they even need to do this again then?
Yeah,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. I think we could take that out.
As long as we keep them both together, as long
Yeah.
as we have the pre-app and the full application.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just delete it for now. Are there any of these questions that people wanted to change, or I know we had some additions that we might want to make, but describe the project, that's pretty straightforward. Goals. Who will benefit? How will you measure success? How does this fit with the requirements of the Community Preservation Act? That one's very important. How does this fit with existing city plans? Actually, I think Wisty, didn't you send some comments
To Christian, yeah.
to
And I forget what they
Christian?
were. I did not keep a list of those comments or whatever.
Hold on, he sent them to me. I gotta look at my email. I think you had a comment right there on that triggered that in my brain.
Mhm.
I think you were the only person to send to send any comments.
I was confused. I thought that if I sent the comments out, then I would be like outside of meeting stuff, so.
Yeah. I think as long as it goes to
Keep
Christian
my
and he
mouth
doesn't,
shut.
as long as it goes to Christian and he doesn't send it to anyone else, then I think
Okay.
we're okay. Hold on, this is upside down for some reason. Please, so under project description at the top, you wrote, please include drawings, photos, or maps if they would be helpful to describe your project. So that kind of goes along with photos, maps. That kind of goes along with like the
Quotes and,
plans. Yeah,
yeah.
quotes and plans. And then what else do we have? Oh, okay. This is what we've been talking about the whole time. Would this project benefit from, or does it require official approval from specific official entities? What is required? Has approval been received?
Mhm. Yep.
So again, I'm still in Rentham. They have a two-step process. The first is eligibility and then the second is funding. It's a very
Mhm.
short one-page application, instructions. And they include its goals. How does it accomplish the goals of the CPA? Timeline. What's the implementation timeline, which I don't know. I think that might be something that we're missing a bit.
Yeah, but
But, okay.
Create a timeline. Yeah, right here.
Budget, full budget, including following information. Total amount of project with itemization, additional funding sources. Included, committed, or under consideration. Basis for your budget and the source of information you used. And then support. Have the appropriate town boards and commissions express support and or approve the project.
Mhm.
What is the nature and level of community support for this project? I mean, I think that does in sort of short order get to what we're trying to determine. here.
Oh, Donna, what group is that?
This is Rentham,
How do you spell that?
RENTHAM.
No, isn't there a W?
WRENTHAM.
Sorry, did I not say the W?
No,
Oops.
the W is silent.
Right.
So
It's
I'm
the
kind of
rental
wondering.
outlets. You can go shopping there and stuff.
So I'm kind of wondering if like question 7 here, I wonder if this, since it's a little vague, it kind of sounds like that's what we're asking, but it's kind of not. I wonder if we should change this to, do you have letters of support from, you know, or just say like, please attach any letters of support. I think that's kind of getting at what this is saying. And then a separate question would be approval from the necessary departments or commissions, but that's kind of what we're saying up here. So I don't know if we want to reword this based on what you just read, or
I'm gonna copy it. Put it in the chat.
we could change this to just say what they said, has the appropriate department or commission signed off on this project.
One of the questions that I think we were trying to get at with this that isn't there is, does the community support you? Not just does the official commissions, but if you and it was one of the things we talked about a lot in, for instance, in the discussions around a lot of the Highland Park projects, is that we didn't see anything from the immediate community around that. So I'm not saying don't do this, but I'm saying that there's more here. That I think if we're going to be this specific, I think we need to say, are there community groups that are supporting you? Are there, we need to have more there, because it was more than just the official boards.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe right for number 7, we should say, like, please describe the community support behind your project and attach any letters of support to your application that you've received.
So I copied and pasted that specific
Oh, let me
question
see.
from Rentham right into the chat, and it does kind of get at that. And I think after the end of it, it could be, please attach, please attach letters of support, etc. And I'm just in one town. There's so many more to check out.
Yeah.
All the
Let me
things.
see if this
All the
works.
things.
So here's that wording copied directly in here. And then,
I think that covers it.
and then please attach any letters of support to your application.
I would suggest we use the term city boards,
Oh, yep,
just to keep the mayor happy.
in our city. Also, I don't think it needs to be capitalized.
Yeah.
Is that
I think that works.
better?
Yeah.
Good job, Rentham, and good job, Donna, finding that.
Oh yeah, I'm just like jumping through all the towns now. I don't know why I didn't do this last year, man.
I think we did some, I think maybe
We
Christian.
did do some of that.
Yeah,
Before I got
Christian
here,
did some
yeah.
too. Yeah, it might have been before you got here. I think, so the next section on here is the budget. I don't know if we want, we were gonna add another question about I guess maybe that's more under the budget. Like adding questions about quotes, documentation for your costs. Oh, we were gonna add a question, what if the project is not fully funded?
Right.
Do we want to add that as like a number 8? I guess 8 is budget, but we could renumber. I feel like it would fit better up here than like once we start into budget. All right, I don't know what this is gonna look like if I try and copy and paste this, but I'm gonna give it a shot. How should we word this?
Are
in
there
the
plans
event-
for partial funding? Rather than if you're not fully funded, do you have
Yeah.
plans for partial funding or something like that?
In the event that you are not, that your project is not fully funded, how? Yeah,
What would be your next steps? Because it could be just, we're gonna raise the other money, or it could be, we're going to do, we'll do A and B, but we won't do C. So in the case of partial fund, in the case you receive partial funding, what would be your next steps? Or something like that.
yeah, what? I don't, we can put that for now. We can reword it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so when we say that they should have quotes and quotes and stuff about funding sources or whatever, if it's hard for me to think about the level that we want to ask them, because when they go to people and say, I have no idea if I'm going to get funding, like everything is still up in the air. I don't know how to explain this.
well, I guess what I was, that one came up, regarding it's like, it's support for your budget, like, why are you asking for this much money?
Right.
And it came up, for the fairgrounds, because we were like, okay, so you're asking for this much money, like, what's the basis of that? Do you have a quote? And I think in situations like that, like, people can get a quote from a roofer without having to pay for that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's someplace just in this recent discussion, there was reference to what is the source, that came for your quote or came from the amount you're saying. I think it would be maybe good to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think we need to know, like, we need to know that these are like real numbers
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not just someone guessing like, oh, I think it'll take $50,000 and then
Right.
they get a quarter of the way into construction and it can't be finished and it just sits abandoned because they didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
So I think if people want their project to get funded, like they have to have some justification for some numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Even, that is extra work you have to do, even though it might not get funded, but that's just kind of the
Right.
steps that you have to do.
Um,
So I'm not sure where to add that on here, but
okay, I'm going back to Rentham and putting. it in the
yeah, what's
chat
Rentham
again.
got?
Describe the basis for your budget and the sources of information you used.
So maybe like at the bottom of the budget part, like under, we asked them, I think this section could be a lot smaller. I think at most there was one of these filled in. This is other sources of funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe
Leave
take off
two.
like,
leave 2, or 3, but we can cut.
Yeah, it can be much.
okay. And then maybe I'll just copy like one of these boxes from up here and just have that question in there right after that. This is now number 10. I can do a little tidying up in this afterwards. Donna, you want to read that again?
Oh, I put it in the chat so you can copy
Oh,
and
okay.
paste it.
Oh, that's even better. Thanks, Rentham. Right. I feel like maybe,
I think that what you just pasted kind of goes under
yeah,
that right there.
it goes under that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I'll just cut that and move it up. I was trying to think how to make this section a little clearer, because I think sometimes people didn't always put like what the total budget is, and then how much was going to be CPA, and then how much was from other sources. I think there were some that they only put down like the CPA part, and like the oh, I don't even remember which one it was. Whether it
feel
was
like most
the historical one.
Okay.
Sorry, Garth, go ahead.
I was just saying, I feel like almost all of them were almost all CPA funds. There was, like there was a little bit of funds for the fairgrounds thing. There was some amount of funds for the bocce courts, but most of the things were just.
I think the
Right.
historical documents one had
And
like
Yeah, they
in
had a little bit.
kind.
yeah, they did.
The museum had
Museum had money.
money, they were kicking in some, yeah.
Yeah.
The bicycle feasibility study had 25,000.
From
Mhm,
another
Kind.
CPA.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
They were
So
hoping.
I mean, maybe this is clear enough, and maybe people just didn't follow didn't follow it well enough in a couple of cases. I don't know.
Should
Probably
that go
just
below the
put in
itemization?
there.
Sorry, Donna, what were you saying?
Well, I was just wondering if that should go below, or do we even need to have both of those? Do we need to have the upper one when we're
Yeah,
just
I don't-
asking them to break it down?
Yeah, I don't think we need to have the upper one. I think we can take that out.
Take this one out,
Yeah.
because then this is total.
CPA
And-
Yeah,
and other funds, so it's the same, it's the same.
I'm gonna bold it so people see.
Yeah, there you go. But the other thing that I think is confusing, and I did note that the History Museum, I don't think that they understood this well. The difference between in-kind funding and actual money. So they were gonna like put some of their money in, but then they were talking about all of the work that people were gonna do around it. And that didn't get captured. So I feel like, I don't know if if there's an extra column in this where we have other CPA funds, other cash, and then in-kind funding.
So make it
Yeah,
3 columns.
That seemed like that'd be worthwhile, because I mean that gets super fuzzy, right? Because it's like, oh, are these people like $30 an hour people, or $10 an hour people, or
Mhm.
$150 an hour people? But still, it could be like, oh, we're gonna have 4 volunteers do 100 hours of work.
Yeah,
And we could certainly ask about that either during the pre-app or the app meeting.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can leave it up to them, how they establish those guidelines. I mean, I used to do that all the time in my old job. It's like, okay, well, 3 teachers are gonna be attending this thing, and they're, it's off of their time, so that's $50 each and in-kind funding or whatever.
Mhm.
Mm.
We could provide guidelines, like if we wanted to set, okay, well, 4 hours of a professional architect, so that's $400, whereas 3 hours of manual labor, and maybe we set a different scale for that, or we could leave it up to them.
I think let's leave it up to them. If we've got a question about it, we'll ask.
That sounds
Yeah.
good. Yep.
I don't want to make it so arduous to figure this stuff out that, they give up, throw their hands.
Yep. absolutely.
Okay, so does that look good the way that is then? CPA funds, other funding sources, in-kind value, and then the total. Total there, and then totals at the bottom.
Mhm.
Then we have a total.
Yeah.
So you think we can just
We
remove
can take
this,
that out, I think. Yeah,
and then I'll remove where it says complete budget, because that's redundant. Okay,
Okay, so one more thing here on the in-kind, I mean. Well, I guess people can donate supplies and materials, so yeah, never mind. I rescind my about to say something.
yeah, I was kind of thinking like, should it be like in-kind work or
Mhm.
in-kind donations or in-kind, but it could be any of those, so maybe just keep it value.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, if it was donations, maybe that would go under other funding.
Absolutely, if it's cash money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they'll describe their budget and the sources of information.
Yeah,
And then we go to this is where people describe how much they're getting from other sources. I'm just looking to see if things that we said earlier, what if, okay. Okay, and then we have our timeline. I think this one, again, like, I think people didn't really like break things down that much. I mean, I don't think we should ask for like a whole Gantt chart of like every task in their project, but I don't
Right.
know. I don't know. We could leave this the way it is. I don't.
Right. Some of them did more than others. Like, I mean, the
Yeah.
Highland Park Trails project, like they did actually have like, oh, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this.
Mhm.
And then some of the people were like, yeah, we're gonna build the things in this.
Yeah. Start this time and this time.
Mhm.
Right. Sometime in the next year we will do X, Y, and Z.
well, and I think that, that's something that it becomes part of the scoring, Do they really,
Yeah.
the thoroughness of the planning?
Yeah. So we're almost at the bottom of the application here, and it's also almost 7 o'clock.
Seems
Um,
good, yeah.
I did get a couple updates from Christian about some things, so we could, if we want to wrap this up, I don't know if there's anything. So we have implementation, project manager. I guess we can leave that. I don't know. Do we need to ask about plans for hiring them, or?
I don't think we need to ask about plans for hiring them. I think we need to know
We need to know who it is.
who the responsible person is if there are questions. That's really what this is about. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's the person who either wrote the proposal or it's even the head of the organization.
Yeah.
We're starting to get into it's, you've had this money for a year and there's a hole in the ground, and why isn't there more? It's the project manager who's really the person that needs to be talked to.
How about I just change this to say, please provide the project managers.
So, I mean, it is the project, I guess it's if it's different from the person that you wrote in
Mhm.
as the impetus person in the beginning, because I know that the rec department might be the applicant, but we're assuming that it could be somebody else as the main, point of contact or project manager, and that might, sort of give us this answer right at the beginning.
Well, if different from applicant.
Yeah,
Okay. Then we have like the maintenance budget, and then just the signature line after that.
None of them, the maintenance budget, was that relevant to any of the ones that we got?
Yeah, that had to do with making sure that they could keep up whatever it was after after something was built.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This people's
You know,
ran
that
together.
it wasn't going to be built and then just sit there and deteriorate. That was the question.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if should we have a question that says like asking them the source of funding for the maintenance? Because this is
Well,
just a budget, but like where is that money coming from?
Well, and also I think it should be a plan, like maybe there isn't money attached to it, maybe it's just a plan, so.
Maybe it's a general statement. Who will maintain it? Who will maintain the project after CPC funding is over? And where will the funds come from? And something that's that simple, so that,
I think that's more realistic.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I guess that's what this is, right? If your project requires ongoing maintenance, who will be responsible for that for the 5 years after completion? How will that maintenance be funded? I guess we
Yeah.
already asked that, and
Yeah,
I
we already-
yeah,
Oops.
take out
We
the
were better than
maintenance
we thought.
budget. Yeah, take out the maintenance budget, I think it's
It's
kind of
redundant.
overkill.
okay. Okay, so that's the end of the application.
Okay,
Yay,
hey,
So
Okay.
I'll save these changes and like make sure, the formatting is all right or whatever, and I'll send that to Christian, so he'll have that. Because this is just saved on my computer right now.
okay.
Good. And I'm gonna,
Okay, so it's 6:56. I'd say our timing is impeccable. On our agenda, oh man, I lost it again.
old business, FY23 project updates.
Yeah, project updates. So I talked to Christian earlier today. I mean, basically his only updates were, as you probably know, City Council approved all of our recommendations for all the projects. So everything's moving forward. Christian is looking into getting started on like the memorandum of understanding for the recreation department, where we said it had to be on recreation land. We're going to do like a memorandum of understanding for that. And then also the what's the word? The contracts for the private organizations.
Mhm.
So that's like Christian's response. That's like his job is getting all that stuff together. So he said he's working on that. And then also at the last meeting, you guys voted on our budget for the upcoming year, and that financial order has been put together and just circulated to me and the mayor and Christian, just having us look at it to make sure it looked all right. So that is also moving forward, and we'll go to city council for our budget for next year. So those are the updates. Christian.
Was it discussed at the last one, which I couldn't make, about like, I don't know if that's just part of the contracts. There was some discussion of like, oh, do we get like some brass things that people like embed in their project, or do we do banners, or do we do lawn signs?
Yeah.
On the like using some of the admin funds for like a thank you CPA, or thank you Greenfield CPA kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Donna.
so one of the things that we talked about is that it'd be pretty easy to go ahead and get some banners for projects under construction, and that would those would be things that we would be able to use again and again, and then like in terms of the more finite or permanent ones, we would buy ourselves some time by getting some banners. Yeah,
So
that's my recollection.
So is the thought we're gonna like order some banners with our admin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
fund?
that would
Sounds-
be admin money, yeah.
So how about before our next meeting, if, I know there are other examples from other towns and things. If you find some examples of wording that you like for a sign, we should send those to Christian, and then at our next meeting, we could, vote like, these are the 5 that we want to do, or, whatever. So if anyone or all of us want to do some research and find some good signage wording. Otherwise, we have to hash it out during a meeting, and that'll just take up time. So find some good ones before, see what Rentham has.
I'm gonna move to Rentham.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get that. And then I guess our next meeting is
June
June 22nd.
Yep.
Yep, and
Well,
so
They'll slide at that point.
what's that?
We'll be be on the downhill slide. It's after the solstice. The
Oh,
days will be
Yeah.
getting darker. Everything will be collapsing.
yeah. And I guess I don't think anything urgent would come up before then, with like the projects getting approved or like the contracts going through. But I guess if for some reason it did and we had to vote on something, we could meet really quick to do it. But I don't foresee that happening. So probably see it June, but keep an eye on your email, I guess.
Great. Can I say one more thing about
Sure.
Rentham before we?
Yeah, yeah.
So their deadline for eligibility is May 20th or something, and then their applications are due at the end of June.
Mm,
So I would really love to see our timeline. I feel like our timeline was just so conflicting with these people trying to apply for stuff, but they didn't know if they were going to get capital or not, and is the city going to fund it? There was a lot of that. So as we move forward in time, I'm hoping that maybe we can look at our own process and see if it makes sense to try and move forward a little bit with stuff.
yeah.
Just an FYI.
And I guess the one complication there is that if things move quicker, then it's going to be even more ahead of capital. Except, be after the capital from the last year, but still.
Yeah, I mean, and
more
that's what I
ahead of the
think,
next
that
one.
might be where we want to be, because then we
That's the
know
thing,
it's
it's
like-
funded.
It was our first year, so
Yeah,
now
Yeah.
everybody can be like, oh, well, capital turned us down last year, so we really want CPA to do it this year. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do we have reports on capital, like for the ones that right, they had already funded the bocce, but like
yeah, and
the rest of pickleball and like Highland Park, were those
no, I
funded?
think that's that's an example of how you could use the previous year's capital, or you find out, like, they're gonna find out in June what they're gonna get for the coming year. So the Highland Park signage got cut way down, and now that's gonna be a study. I think it was recommended out as being very well funded. I don't remember all the details. And it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. Do we want to get there before, capital or after capital? Because I feel like capital's gonna be like, oh, look, CPC is recommending this, so we don't have to do it,
Mhm.
Just a thought, just putting it out there.
And I think that's like, in talking to Stuart, I think we're supposed to be after capital. Like, capital is supposed to come first, and
Right.
then if it doesn't get funded, then it can get CPA money. We
Yeah.
shouldn't be like supplanting capital.
Right, that was my
Okay,
understanding as well.
Yeah,
Right.
so.
Yeah, is there other ways the town could make it happen?
Yeah.
And then if there's not, or it gets voted down, like, do we want to fund it?
Yeah,
Like,
because
I think it's super important anyway, even though it wasn't in the town budget this year, kind of thing.
right, and I think that even though something can look like it's gonna go through capital, then
Mhm.
something else can happen and then it gets
Yeah.
shot down. And that affected our decision, when we were looking at the Highland Park Trail signage, like, oh, well, the mayor put in for a bunch of money for that, so. I'd rather be in the position of saying, well, we don't have to, than be in the position of them saying, oh, well, we don't have to. you know?
Mhm.
Just a thought
Yeah.
for the future.
You know, all this is coming up really soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
If
I was,
June is next month,
I
Right.
know.
it's almost like pre-app time.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so one thing we need to do before the pre-apps is have our public hearing,
Yeah,
and then after the public hearing, we need to, if we want to do any updates to our plan, finalize any updates on our plan, and then pre-applications. So, I mean, we're going a month at a time right now, but we might have to start going back to every 2 weeks with all this stuff coming up. So maybe a month until June, and then maybe go back to every 2 weeks after that to get this stuff done. I don't know. We'll have to see.
can we have subcommittees?
We can. We could have subcommittees. I mean, subcommittees need to meet, in a public meeting and
Mhm.
take notes and all that stuff too. But
Right.
so it's almost like
Yeah,
you might as well just meet.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, keep that in mind, I guess.
Okay,
All right.
with all that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion to
Second.
adjourn, seconded by Susan. All those in favor of adjourning? Aye. All
Bye,
right.
bye.
We're adjourned at 7:06.
It's been
Right.
fun. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Yeah,
Bye.
Dave, you got a break this time. You didn't have to chair
I know. Thank goodness. Good night.
it. Yeah.
right.